Attention to orders. Local veterans that have passed. Jerry Salzman, U.S. Army. Donald Brewitt, U.S. Coast Guard, World War II. Hobart Griffin, U.S. Army. John Bentz, U.S. Air Force, Vietnam. Sam Funch, U.S. Army. Max Medall, U.S. Army Air Corps, World War II. Michael Meyer, U.S. Army National Guard. Randolph Forick, U.S. Marines. Larry Miller, U.S. Navy. Orville Lazenby, U.S. Army, Korea. John Williams, U.S. Air Force. Dwight Keller, U.S. Army. Calvin Garvin, U.S. Navy, Korea. Lewis Mallet, U.S. Army, World War II. Ramon Vanilla, U.S. Army, World War II. Bernard Doms, U.S. Army, World War II. John Shank, U.S. Army, World War II. Leroy Steinman, U.S. Army, World War II. Richard Metler, U.S. Marines, Vietnam. Harry Alfrey, U.S. Army. Carol Adams, U.S. Army, World War II. Robert Earl, U.S. Navy, World War II. Harold Plummer, U.S. Navy, World War II. Merle Cox, U.S. Army, Korea. Martha Currier, U.S. Navy. Donald Craig, U.S. Army. Larry Carlin, U.S. Navy. Richard Bachmeyer, Air National Guard. Ralph Pandillo, U.S. Navy, Korea. George Lamb, U.S. Army. Benjamin Parsons, U.S. Marines, U.S. Army. William Rossman, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Darrell Powell, U.S. Army. Carlos Overmeyer, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Harry Walzak, U.S. Army. Stephen Grooms, U.S. Air Force, Vietnam. Harold Showalter, U.S. Air Force, Korea. Curtis Fider, U.S. Army. Dwayne Stucker, U.S. Army, Korea and Vietnam. Raymond Kinsey, U.S. Army Air Corps and U.S. Air Force, World War II and Korea. Dale Kotcher, U.S. Army, World War II. Wilbur Holstein, U.S. Army, Korea. Eugene Japowski, U.S. Army. Lawrence Long, U.S. Merchant Marine, U.S. Army, World War II. Morris Pratt, U.S. Army, World War II and Korea. Robert Meyer, U.S. Army, Korea. Pierce McGee, U.S. Navy. Purdue Hunt, U.S. Army, Korea. Veterans around the nation. Master Chief Don Herther, U.S. Navy, World War II, Pearl Harbor survivor. Donald Seaborg, U.S. Army, World War II and Korea. Charles Lawson, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Thomas Gleason, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Renaud Bell, U.S. Army. Thomas Kasser, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Robert Dentler, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Jack Hahn, U.S. Army, World War II. Felix Paquette, U.S. Army, World War II. Jerry Blackwell, U.S. Air Force. Joseph Patone, U.S. Navy, World War II. Harold Loftman, U.S. Army, Korea. Joseph Lerner, U.S. Army Air Corps, World War II. Joseph Gerbach, U.S. Army, World War II. Patrick Agosta, U.S. Air Force, Korea. Kevin DeMille, U.S. Air Force, Vietnam. Real Admiral Jeremiah Deaton, U.S. Navy, Vietnam. Police and fire killed in the line of duty. Special Agent Melissa Morrow, FBI. Trooper Kevin Miller, Connecticut State Police. Aldern Bertrain, 44, place for women held captive in south of France, gave himself up to be a hostage in exchange for a hostage. Rosie the Riveters, Irma Bailey, Doris Bragdon, Eleanor Cheney, Pearl Hill, Florence Holmes, Frances Shara, Marjorie Shank, Ellen Switgard, and Edna Van Son. POWs and MIAs recently recovered. Army Corporal William McDowell, 20, of Stuttgart, Arkansas, killed, missing in action December 2nd, 1950. Remains returned December of 1994 and identified March 2018. Will be laid to rest April 4th. Army Corporal Roy Hopper, 21, of Miami, Florida, killed in action July 31st, 1950 in South Korea. Remains exhumed January 9th of 2017, identified March of 2018, and will be laid to rest April 8th. Air Force Colonel Edgar Davis, 32, of Goldsboro, North Carolina, killed, missing in action September 17th, 1968, over Laos. Remains identified March of 2018 and will be buried in his hometown April 6th of this year. Army Air Force's 2nd Lieutenant William Hart, 22, of Columbia, South Carolina, killed, missing in action in 1943, shot down over Romania. Was recovered unknown 1947, exhumed of April last year, identified March this year, and will be buried in his hometown April 6th. Marine Corps Private John Tillman, 21, of Reno, Nevada, killed in action November 20th, 1943, Tarawa Island. Remains exhumed March 13th of 2017 and will be buried in his hometown April 6th. Marine Corps Private First Class Lyle Trapillos, 19, of Silverton, Oregon, killed in action November 20th, 1943 on Tarawa Island. Exhumed October 17th of 2016, identified March of this year, and will be married in his hometown April 7th. Naval Reserve Aviation Ordnance Man, 2nd Class, Orr Scharninghouse, 22, of Macomb, Ohio, killed, missing in action September 8th, 1944, on a dive bombing mission. Aircraft located in 2005 and body recovered in April of 2015. Accounted for in August last year and was buried in his hometown April 7th. Sergeant, all souls present and accounted for.
Thank you.